Hello everybody. Today we're going back a little bit and talking about some lore I've yet to talk about on this channel. The lore around the significance of Hamlet, a DLC from single player that nobody regards as having any important backstory nowadays. But I did a little bit of digging and a lot of theorising, and it turns out there might be more to Hamlet than you first thought. From the connections between two ancient civilizations to what they left behind, and the lore of one very bizarre individual who paved the entire way for pretty much everything to do with the shadows in Don't Starve Together. Today, we're going to be talking about the ancient Herald, what they left behind, and their impact on both the world of Hamlet, but also Don't Starve's story itself. And yes, before we get into the nonsense theory that I just made up, I did hide some codes in this video, and we're also hosting a giveaway on the Discord like always. First come, first serve, so good luck. Some background story before we dive in, since probably not a lot of you at home have played the single player DLC, Hamlet. In this expansion, you're tasked to survive like always, but in a rainforesty jungle setting, one populated with civilization bustling and thriving, but also one populated by a civilization long gone, with the remnants of which being left behind in the form of these ruins, not unlike the ones you can find in the regular Don't Starve forest world. It's never outright said who once lived in these ruins, but due to the pig iconography everywhere and the expansion's focus on pigs overall, it's safe to assume that these ruins were once home to the pigs we see both today in Hamlet and Don't Starve Together. The ancient spirits being pig ghosts also give that away. Be them the ancestors to the pig's topside or not, it doesn't really matter for today's video. We more so care about the things left behind in this world, rather than who left them behind. Lots of creaky old ruins, a giant dormant robot, and a clock that can control the end of the world, the aporkalypse calendar. This thing will slowly tick forward as the days move on, and can even be manipulated by the player themselves to either speed it up or wind it back. No matter how the clock reaches its end, once all of the dials are lined up on it, the sky outside will turn a moody red, and all sorts of horrible things will befall the world of Hamlet. Aggressive creatures, increased rate of attacks, but more importantly, the arrival of the ancient Herald. A gigantic ink blight that resembles the ancients from the original Don't Starve world, the ruins found in the caves below the forest, genuinely being the very first appearance of both an ink blight, complete with the dark tatters it drops, and an ancient ever shown off in the story. The long tail, the tall head, the little buggy arms, it all matches up with the ancients we've seen nowadays. Well, nowadays used loosely. Actually, I made a mistake here. The ancients in this old bug-like design the Herald uses was actually teased about a year before Hamlet was first playable, with the Metheus puzzles that came out in 2017. Both Hamlet and the Metheus puzzles were announced around the same time, give or take a few months. However, this is still the first time we see an actual quote-unquote living ancient before Metheus made her debut around 7 to 8 years later down the line. But why is it here? Why is there an ancient from a completely different part of the continent found in the Hamlet region? These guys didn't live in these ruins, as we established by the pigs everywhere. Plenty of statues of pigs and relics with their design, but not any statues of ancients, their carving, or any of their architecture that we'd grown to know from the forest ruins. Why on earth does someone from so far away end up here where they really shouldn't belong? Because it's time we go into my theory for this video. My theory that the ancient Herald, the very one we're seeing attacking the world of Hamlet, once came here before, and gave the ancient pigmen a warning, be it out of consideration or to drive fear into them, to prepare them for their own little invasion of the shadows. One, thankfully, we don't see in the world of Don't Starve Together. To start, I believe that the ancient Herald was originally a high-ranking member of the ancients we see in the ruins. Maybe even a researcher or an artificer of some kind, not unlike the ones we see mentioned today, like with Metheus. I believe that this sole ancient travelled to the world of Hamlet as a messenger, a herald, so to speak, to warn a fellow sapient race of what discoveries they had uncovered with the ancient gateway, or even the Lunar archive, if such knowledge was widespread at that point. Maybe the ancient herald fled to the Hamlet Plateau during the event that devastated the ancients. Either way, they were here now to tell the pigmen that lived here that they needed to prepare. I do have proof that the ancients from the forest and the ancient pigs from Hamlet did interact with each other. Most notable of this is the existence of Fuelite. As we know, Fuelite can be found literally everywhere in the ruins in Don't Starve Together, with statues being made from the stuff lining pretty much every hallway, and crumbs of it being made into walls. We even have a view on how Fuelite is made in these very same ruins, with the dust moths being able to produce it with basic materials. But as you probably know, you don't see Fuelite all too commonly in Hamlet. But it's not completely absent either. Whilst there is no actual way to produce Fuelite in Hamlet like you can in DST, you can still very much find pieces of it both in its raw form inside jars and crafted into weapons and armour found elsewhere, albeit incredibly rarely each time. When I was getting footage, I was able to find a couple of pieces of Fuelite equipment in these secret rooms, but not a single piece of it raw from pots, and I searched a lot of them. It can spawn in them, trust me. My theory here is one of two. Either that the two civilizations traded among each other, with the Bug Ancients giving the Pig Ancients Fuelite, and the Pig Ancients giving the Bug Ancients, I don't know, carrots or something. Or the Ancient Herald that I mentioned earlier brought Fuelite with them when they travelled to Hamlet, either as a tithing or a desperate scrape at supplies when they fled. The incredible low volume and rarity of the stuff really makes it seem that it cannot be produced here, and had to either be traded for or brought here with oneself. So back to my theory. I feel that the Herald, possibly before or even during the event that devastated the Bug Ancients, came to the Pig Ancients to warn them about what was to come. A war with the shadows that they would have no chance at surviving unless they had a little help, or even a little foresight from somebody who knew about what to expect. And maybe, just maybe, some lunar-powered robots that would excel at fighting shadow monsters. Yep, it's time we talk about the Iron Hulk. This big scrap heap is an ancient robot that you can find in Hamlet, littered in several pieces across a massive ancient battlefield, a remnant of a war lost and won. Despite being in several pieces, it's still functional, to a degree. It'll activate if you break stuff nearby or if it gets charged by lightning. It'll also be permanently active during the aporkalypse, which is incredibly relevant, so don't forget that. The robot itself feels almost out of place in Hamlet. The pig ruins employ rudimentary spear and dart traps, but never anything as sophisticated as a laser-shooting, bomb-throwing robot. It's almost as if the Iron Hulk was not made by someone from around here, and instead made by somebody from a more technologically advanced civilization. One maybe known for their mastery over robotics, and perhaps made by someone who would also have a reason to build a giant robot. A giant robot that powers up during the apocalypse, and a giant robot that is capable of damaging shadow creatures. Yeah, this thing had to be made by a Bug Ancient, and most likely, the Ancient Herald one I keep yapping on about. I feel like the Ancient Herald came to this Hamlet plateau and either built the Hulk themselves, or instructed, maybe even inspired the Pig Ancients to build it to protect themselves from an apocalyptic event involving the shadows. Whether the robot was made by the Herald or designed by it doesn't matter. Either way, it had to 100% be made in Hamlet, since it's made from iron. A material only found in Hamlet. You don't see anything made of iron in Don't Starve Together. But do you remember how I called this thing a lunar-powered robot? I feel this way since it's well established that the Bug Ancients dabbled in lunar research thanks to the Ancient Archives, which is an area made by the Ancients fully dedicated to lunar research, but also the fact the Hulk itself shoots lasers, which is a popular attack used by a couple of lunar-themed bosses, as well as the laser clops of course. But the main reason I think it's lunar-powered is the fact it's made out of infused iron. An unstable, infused material that can decay into a nullified state, much like the infused moon shards found in Don't Starve Together. Plus, the fact that the infused iron is used to make living armour, a plant-like mech suit, only strengthens the connections between the infused iron, the Iron Hulk, and lunar magic. Infused materials and empowered plant-based armor. Obviously, there is a counterpoint to all of this, since all of the energy attacks performed by the Iron Hulk are red, much like the Heralds, and red energy is typically seen in shadow-based attacks, not lunar ones. So it's possible this machine uses some kind of shadow magic instead, or heck, even some kind of freaky hybrid of the two types of power. Wouldn't be too far-fetched of an implication either, since we know for a fact that the Bug Ancients did dabble in both types of research, with the Ancient Gateway and the Lunar Archive. The more I talk about this, the more I realise the Ancient Herald and Wagstaff are almost parallels exactly. Gosh, do Clay love their parallels. It's possible that the Iron Hulk is what inspired Wagstaff to make his big stupid robot and Don't Starve Together after all. So that's the Iron Hulk mystery cleared up. Or, well, my theory on it cleared up. But one absolutely massive thing I can't avoid much longer. Why am I implying that this guy, this gigantic evil ink-blight monster that tries to kill you, would have wanted to help armor civilization against the very thing he is a part of? Well, I also got a theory for that too. Let's go back a little bit. I think that the Ancient Herald, still alive and in their buggy form, travelled to the Hamlet Plateau to warn the pigmen that lived there about an imminent danger, be it one that was about to befall the Bug Ancients, or one that already did. The Herald then either directly helped them or inspired the pigmen there to build methods of coping with the shadowy threat, with a lunar apparatus that could manipulate the positioning of celestial bodies to ensure the apocalypse doesn't happen, as well as a giant shadow murdering robot to help fight the shadow threat. But as we know with Maxwell and even Charlie dabbling in the shadows herself, they are not ones to be messed with. They'll trap Maxwell and torture him with the same awful song over and over for countless eternities, and Charlie seemingly laugh in the face of her when reached out to directly. I feel that Tenebrau, or Shrouden, according to the Bug Ancients, made an example of the Herald. Somehow, they finally got their grasp on them, and twisted them into what they are now. Not just a shadow like the rest of the Bug Ancients ended up as, but instead as an ink blight, the very strongest members of Tenebrau's army. Contorting the Herald into a tormented spirit, one forced to suffer the fate it tried so hard to keep locked away for good. And be it due to an unforeseen failsafe or a variable not considered, one that cannot be harmed by the Iron Hulk whatsoever. It's interesting that the Iron Hulk can attack shadow monsters and damage them, but not the Herald itself. Seriously, shadow creatures typically can only ever be damaged by players directly, and rarely if ever by other mobs. Which, whilst looking back on this footage, looks to include the Ancient Herald itself too, since I noticed it was also damaging shadow creatures. And the Iron Hulk, much like its creator, can damage them just fine too. Either because it was designed for specifically this role, or as a byproduct of it potentially using shadow magic itself. Look at the Hulk's laser attacks too. They are almost identical to the energy bursts the Herald can perform. Strengthens their connection, don't you think? Would be a good idea for someone that made a big shadow-killing robot to put in a little failsafe in case the shadow-killing robot would happen to turn on them, wouldn't it? As for the apocalypse calendar itself, the very thing able to manipulate the flow of the apocalypse possibly was either made by the Ancient Herald or even the pig folk that lived here long after they transformed as a way to control the calamity that caught up with them. Once the Iron Hulk, which is now seen in pieces, most likely failed its original task. Either way, it doesn't really matter how, but the calendar got wound back up, and the surviving pigs would go topside in their cities a few generations later, and the Ancient Herald was sealed away, trapping it as the new herald of an apocalypse. A herald of Tenebrau. But not the actual heralds of Tenebrau. In fact, we may as well talk about these guys really quick. See, there is another theory we could use, which is that the Ancient Herald turned up as the form we see him now, with a big shadowy evil body, which caused the Pigmen Ancients to forge their own research into handling the apocalypse, and the Iron Hulk instead being made by the Bug Ancients from the regular world as some kind of war machine to wage war on the Pigmen. But I don't think that's the case. Mainly because the Iron Hulk is made from iron, and that's not found at all in Don't Starve Together's world, but also because of these guys right here. The actual Heralds of Tenebrau. These are the void masks that spawn out of the Shadow Rifts in Don't Starve Together. If you take their masks and perform a stage play with them, you'll get some backstory on how they're the ones that travel to worlds and spread the message of Tenebrau themselves, not the Ancient Herald. This guy isn't seen or mentioned anywhere in Don't Starve Together. I feel the title of Herald for this guy doesn't refer to him being a Herald of Tenebrau, but instead just a victim of them. An example that Tenebrau made of someone, and a herald from the Bug Kingdom and not Tenebrau's kingdom. It is still entirely possible though that this is also a herald of Tenebrau, but a more aggressive one. Maybe Tenebrau changed up their herald game as time moved on, opting into freaky mask possession over the plagues of Egypt. Or, quite possibly, the original heralds did turn up before the Ancient Herald did, and we were just never there to see them. One thing I failed to mention until now though is that I lied to you. I'm really sorry. Do you remember how I said there are no statues of Bug Ancients in Hamlet? Well, there is exactly one statue of a Bug Ancient in Hamlet, and it's found right atop the very ruins that contain the clock capable of stopping the aporkalypse. Either this statue was made to honour the person who helped give the Pig Ancients the ability to preserve their future, or was built in fear of the Herald, showing what would arrive if the clock inside ever struck midnight. It's hard to tell if this statue is of the Ancient Herald's Inkblight form, or a possible still alive form. It's lacking that wispy claw atop its head, as well as any thorns that it showcases in its blight form. It does still have that wispy tail though, so it could be either or. What do you guys at home think? Do you think the statue is of the Herald when it was alive, or when it was dead? But that's my theory on the Ancient Herald. Possibly a person that fled the shadows that ravaged their home, bringing Fuelite with them to an allied or even unknown tribe to warn them about the shadows that ravaged them. A person who would then use the lunar and possibly shadow knowledge their civilization used to covet so well, and their knowledge of robots to build a big old conking one just in case the aporkalypse ever arrived. A robot either designed to fight against the shadows or fight for it, and somehow a clock that could even manipulate whatever abstract event the aporkalypse is into happening sooner or later. Someone who would eventually incur the wrath of the entities it tried so long to avoid, and someone we now look back on as the very first glimpse into Tenebrau's prime soldiers, the Inkblights. As for what the aporkalypse actually is, I have no idea. Maybe Hamlet is built on top of a giant shadow rift. Maybe when the moon eclipses the sun and the shadow of Altar is cast upon the land, do the shadows truly get full dominion over the constant. Maybe one day Clay will take us back to Hamlet and help us explore the lore of this place one last time. But I wouldn't count on it, sorry guys. Thank you all so much for watching. It's best to keep in mind that despite all of this, Clay most likely had absolutely no plans to ever explain any of this random nonsense we see in Hamlet. The ruins exist because they're cool, the Iron Hulk exists because it's also cool, and the Inkblights look like the Ancient Herald because, you guessed it, he looked really bloody cool. But it's fun trying to find connections that could or couldn't be there, ain't it? Though, Clay have gone on to say several times that they have the lore figured out quite a few years in advance, so who knows, maybe this will all make sense eventually. I hope you all enjoyed my silly theory. Hamlet deserves a lot more love, so I hope to see you back here again soon. But for now, I'm heading off. Cheers for watching everybody, take care, bye bye.